Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My guest today is Lynda Cormier, leadership person from San Diego, and a mutual friend of ours, Brian Byro, a former guest on the podcast, has introduced us. And welcome, Lynda. I'm glad you're here, and can't wait to get to know you and find out all kinds of leadership stuff from you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So, tell us a little bit about what you do and how did you come to be involved in leadership work?
It's funny because a couple of years ago, I don't know what happened. I was doing a ton of podcasts, and one of the questions that they always ask is like, "So what do you do? Tell us about yourself," right? That's like one of the
Right.
leading questions, and you'd think it would be an easy answer, but my career has been somewhat eclectic. But I would say for the most part, I have taught leadership development for the bulk of my career. Thanks to Brian, I attended one of his seminars. I think I was in my late 20s, and sent him a little message afterwards saying it was amazing, and we formed a friendship from that. And he taught me some of the basics of his seminar, and I went on to build a career doing that. And then I also started, alongside my husband, a wellness company that we started over 10 years ago. We have international distribution, so kind of guided that company. And so I guess I'm a leadership development co-CEO, and as of last year, also the founder of a nonprofit for women. So those, and a wife and a mom. when I talk about who I am and what I do, those things are also really, really important to me.
Do you have time to sleep?
I do. Thankfully now. I didn't. If you would have asked me that question probably 20 years ago, I didn't. But I just turned 59 a few months ago, and also lost my mom in the last 2 years, who I was really close to, and was 98 years young and healthy.
Oh,
And so that combined with my age, where our business is, and the decision to start the nonprofit, it feels like I'm kind of in a new season and a different season, and this season allows me to sleep.
well, that's excellent. Well, well, Brian is known for this whole idea of breaking through. So when you went through his material, but not so much his material, but the experience you had that led
Yeah.
you to a new place, what was the breakthrough that you experienced there?
Well, it was two things. The entire day of the seminar, I had never met Brian before. I didn't know him. I was just one of the participants, and everything he was teaching, it felt like, I know that's how I live. That this is how I live, but I'd never put context around it. So everything felt almost familiar, like I somehow had been living my life. I'm sure the influence of my father and mother, but there was a resonance that was difficult to explain. And then the actual breakthrough, when I broke the board, which then I went on to teach a very similar, board breaking seminar. What I realized at that moment was I was having so many things on my plate, I wasn't focused.
Oh,
And I was in the middle of a contract actually with Chicken Soup for the Soul for the working mother. So
oh
that
yeah.
was on my plate in addition to something else. And I stepped into the circle to go to break the board, and I had less than zero doubt I was going to break it. Of course I was going to break it. It didn't ever dawn on me not, and I didn't. And so it was the best thing that could have happened, because the person that was holding my board, it wasn't Brian, because there was so many people, he can't hold all the boards, asked me, what was I thinking about, or what was I focused on? And like a great coach, he asked me a question, and I realized that I wasn't focused. I was just so excited and having so much fun and so wrapped up in everything, I wasn't focused.
So your emotions were kind of scattered in the atmosphere of the day, but it wasn't focused on what you were going to achieve.
Exactly. I was just so I was so wrapped up in the experience. There was so much joy. It was just such an incredible, I haven't thought about that in a long time. So thank you for bringing that memory back to me. Um, I was so caught up in the just beauty of the experience. And yeah, it was a little lesson too of I guess your ego, right? Because I was so confident I was going to be able to do it. I wasn't really focused on the attempt. So yeah, it was.
So what kind of work were you doing when this experience happened?
At the time, I was really young when I graduated from college, which I majored in English literature, and realized very shortly thereafter that the world did not need an expert in Shakespeare. And so I went into sales and I had some success. And at that time, I think I was working for a pharmaceutical company, actually, Bristol Myers Squibb, which I was working with neonatologists, and then at the same time was also I guess they would call it kind of a side hustle now, but back then I was an independent consultant for a wellness company. And so the juxtaposition of holistic wellness with the pharmaceutical industry led to me leaving the pharmaceutical industry, but it did pave the way for me to do training.
That's fantastic. And do you have a kind of a niche or a particular focus on leadership development that you kind of own, and this is Lynda's thing, and
I did.
you've really mastered that, and people come to you because of what you've mastered?
I do. And, it took a really long time for Brian to call me one day and said, "This is all you," because I was so grateful to him and the mentorship he gave me and the door that he opened to this personal development and leadership. Because I had been doing training because I had success in sales. And I remember the very first speaking engagement, I was like 24, and they put me in front of all of these men that were in this sales force. And they said, "We want you to teach it." Like, what did you do? Because I had earned some award about new accounts or something. And they wanted me to teach these new people, guys, a lot of them, what to do. And of course, I know they expected me to teach negotiation skills, overcoming objections, all the traditional things that sales, especially back then. And when I got up there to teach, I said, "It's about loving people." And they were not accustomed to hearing the word love in a corporate setting. So, it's about
Yeah.
connecting. It's connecting with people. And so the reason I was successful is because I genuinely loved people. So forming a connection with them and then figuring out, okay, what do they need and how can I help them fill that need, was very different than having a conversation and overcoming objections and negotiations where someone wins and someone doesn't. So I had this innate connection to humanity, I guess, from a really young age. And so I now forgot the question.
But I'm just kind of trying to understand how you've approached leadership, and
Oh yeah. So my niche became from very, very early on, and which fed into beautifully with what Brian taught and the way he taught it. But ultimately, after decades of teaching a very similar breakthrough program, I developed my own platform and concept, I guess, and it's called Heroic Joy. And the definition of that is that I believe every single one of us is a hero. And I speak a lot to women and working women, and I have related to being a working woman raising children. And I think sometimes we think of heroes as, the firefighters and neurosurgeons, and they are without a doubt, but so are we. Me and you are every day that we wake up, navigate life, as I did, spend time with my mom before she passed and maintain sanity and follow your dreams. I think that's heroic. And then the word joy for me encompasses pretty much every positive feeling you could have. Joy is it's love and generosity and compassion, and it's so many things. And it's not just witnessing it, but it's experiencing it. So my goal for in the nonprofit and for the participants that would come through my seminars or retreats, which is what I've done more recently, is really that they identify with their heroic joy and live a life that is purposeful, passionate, service oriented, and joyful at the same time.
I totally agree with you. I love that. My, you know, I went through a long series of steps to get to the point where, well, it wasn't that the leadership didn't dominate everything I thought about, but it took a long time. It took about 15 years to get to the point where I had this focal point, focus on what I really saw it. And the idea was that all leadership begins with personal initiative to create impact that makes a difference that matters. And and what I've learned in the interim 20, almost 25 years since then, is that it really begins with our values. What is it that you value, and what is it how do you bring those values into your leadership, and how you do? And I think that's, how joy becomes manifested in everything that we do, because we're living out the values that really mean so much to us.
Yes, I agree with that. And I have had a lot of I love the word personal initiative, or the word initiative. Working with Brian, I wrote a coaching program based on Coach Wooden's philosophies. And initiative is one of them. And it is one of those things also that you can't teach. A lot of times it's something that people have innate, or it can be like anything, it can be developed. But I relate to that word a lot. And I think the other thing that I have probably spent a lot of time on in my leadership training, it's helping people identify what their unique gifts are and how incredible it is to be able to develop those gifts, use them in service. And when they do that, that's where they find joy. And it's kind of this cross section of what people would call your destiny and free will, and where you put personal responsibility. And I think a lot of that comes from us recognizing what our gifts are. And for some people, it's speaking and not being scared of standing up in front of 1,000 people. And for other people, it's listening, and they're both equally important. And as long as they are, if the person can recognize that that is a part of who they are, and it's packaged in only them, can't be found anywhere else, and the sense of miraculousness and extraordinary that is within every person, I feel like the more that we can help people feel that, the better we can make a difference in the world.
Yeah, I see that too. It's remarkable, and and I'm wondering how all of this. I'm curious about your experience, say over the last 5 years, as we've gone through this, very difficult time of the
Yep.
COVID pandemic, and how that factored into in the not only the work you did, but how you as a person, and maybe you and your family responded to what was going on.
Well, I can say with all honesty, probably has been the most difficult time in my personal life. Going through, starting with COVID and 2020, and the my children are mixed, and so we had, during the last 5 years, we had a lot of awareness around social injustice, and kind of increased awareness around that. Conversations that I had with my kids that never ever had any knowledge of their experience, and thinking of I mean, there was just a lot happening in the world, whether it was
Yeah.
politically, socially, financially, physically. With COVID, there was so much. It was one of the most difficult times. And I will say I have the good fortune of having a friend whose work you may know, Dr. Irvin Laszlo.
No, don't
Uh,
know, but I will.
he's he's probably in his 90s, been nominated for Nobel Prize winning work in, if you want to get a chance to know him, he did a TED talk called The Pledge to Love. And he's probably, he's got to be in his 90s now. But I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with him when some of this was going on. And he said, remember, the essence, my takeaway was seeing the ugly beneath the beautiful. And the way that we can impact others and the way that we can make change has to begin with knowing what the problems are. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was, it helped me, but no, it was difficult. It was, a lot of the podcasts I did was how to stay connected to joy in the face of chaos.
And what were you suggesting to people in how you do that? I mean, I'm really, because I think that's, I agree with you. It was a very difficult time for a lot of people. It was a time of disillusionment for a lot of people. A lot of the people, a lot of the institutions that they had trusted in, they found they couldn't trust any longer, or there was a brokenness there. Yeah. And they were having to, from what I observe, they were asking the questions about, well, who am I, and who do I want to be in the future? And so it was a big transition point for many people. And it sounds like you were experiencing something of a similar nature.
Absolutely. It's the reason I started the nonprofit, because I woke up one day and I don't remember exactly what had happened, but I was feeling exceedingly disillusioned. And I am wired very optimistic. Naturally, I see the glass half overflowing. I mean, that's just the way I'm wired. Good in some instances, maybe not good in others, but it's just the way it is. And I found myself being just consumed with sadness and negativity, and it was very foreign. And I just woke up one day and I said, well, I can be a part of the problem, or I can be a part of the solution. What can I do? My little corner of the universe, I don't know where I read that, is you can impact your little corner of the universe. And how can I use what gifts I have been given to make a difference in the way that I know how? Because some people are meant for different types of making a difference, but the difference that I know that I can make is in a way that I can help women identify their gifts, help them recognize that their dreams of starting their own business or bringing their gifts to the world, it's needed. I feel like we need people to live into their potential, because it's like putting the puzzle pieces together for the world. And so if I can help them do that, and because of the business success that I have and the education that I have now of running and guiding a very successful company, with the people that I've been brought together, can help women bring those dreams to life, whether it's with their personal branding, their confidence, their, one-to-one mentorship, financial literacy, whatever it is. And so that was one of the ways that I learned to find joy in the chaos. But more on a personal level, it's taking time in the morning to reflect. I think I have a morning routine that helped me during that time, and I've never stopped it now. So having a morning routine and recognizing what are the things that bring you joy, and how can you bring that into your life, even if it's something as subtle as planting a flower.
Do you feel that your life is simpler now?
I know my life is simpler now. And ironically, that was of all the things that happened in the last 5 years, losing my mom, which I was on my way to go visit her when I found out. And my life literally came to a screeching halt. Everybody handles grief differently, but for about 2 months, I was pretty, I was not capable of.
Despondent? Is that a good word?
I was despondent. I was ineffective. I couldn't I couldn't run the company. I couldn't meet my responsibilities. I was just, I wanted to just be in bed and cry.
Is that okay?
Sorry?
Is that okay to be that?
Oh, I
in that moment, it's okay to be that way, isn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I that was how I was able to survive. Everybody handles things differently, but for me, I was so I was so active and so busy all the time. I had literally just come off a 3-day women's retreat and facilitating it, and all of a sudden everything stopped, and I realized I'll never I don't know what happened, but I don't have it in me to go back to the crazy.
Well, I think what you're describing for us is what a lot of us have gone through. You know, there is a simplification going, or in some certain sense, it's kind of like being purified. A lot of the things that we used to do, we did because we could do them, but not necessarily because we needed to do them. And now the things that we need, now we do the things that we actually need to do because they rise up out of some kind of passion or some kind of, or they're a source of genuine joy that we need to have in our lives in order to maintain our sense of presence and sense of contribution to the world.
Yes, and it's interesting because I hadn't really thought about the years leading up to my mom passing and some of the changes because of the times that you described, and with COVID. And there was some simple pleasures that were discovered, as difficult as it was, obviously, being, sequestered or quarantining and all of those things. I remember my younger daughter and we've spent, when she was younger especially, we would watch the Food Network on television. And so there was a show where I can't think of the name of the show right now, but they give you a basket of random ingredients and you
Yeah.
have to make
Yes.
something delicious, right? And so we were, in the middle of COVID and not going out much. And so I said, what if we do, oh, it's Chopped.
Oh, right.
What if we do a Chopped challenge? What if we do a Chopped challenge? And it was one of the best days. And now we've replicated it because we had so much fun doing it. And so that was kind of a discovery of doing something simple at home together as a family, and that probably would never have happened. So I agree with you. I think that some of the things that emerged was a simplification, but I also think a heightening or sharpening of our priorities.
Mm-hmm. I think I totally agree with you. For me, the pandemic really wasn't, it was just an inconvenience for me. But a year into it, I moved it during the first year, and then the next year, I woke up one morning and I didn't have hearing in this right ear, and then a month later, I lost balance. I got developed vertigo, but it was losing hearing here, and I'm wondering if I'm going to lose hearing here. And I became despondent over the fear that I would never be able to talk like I'm talking with you again and be able to hear another person's voice. And just even thinking about it in this moment is just very difficult because this is my life has been built around these conversations that I've had. And so I've finally got to a doctor, an ENT, and I told him this. I said, I don't know what I'll do if I don't have my hearing. And he says, I guarantee you'll have hearing the rest of your life. And it was like this burden had been
Yeah.
released.
Yeah.
And it took a little bit of time, but out of that came all this energy that I had been missing for a year or two, and I started writing on Substack in January 2022, and man, the energy and the level of production for that next year was something that I'd never done. Then the following year, it followed with starting this podcast.
Yeah.
And so the last 2 years have been sort of this rediscovery of who I am, but it's not really discovery of who I am or who I was, but it's actually who I am now. and I've become this different person in a certain way that is far more fulfilling, in my estimation, doing work that is far more valuable, some of the best work I've ever done. And it followed that very downtime of despondency of feeling like I was losing my life. And so I identify with what you went through, because I can understand that sense of loss. I understand what it means to lose your parents. But that sense of loss and that sense of disruption, then all of a sudden we find something that enables us to, oh, okay, I can go do that. And so you started the nonprofit. And I think that's really, really fantastic. That's an example for all of us.
Yeah, but I love what you just shared, and it's one of the messages that's so important, and I'm so grateful. It's I my daughters were able to recite this quote that I'm about to say probably by the time that they were 5 years old. And
Okay.
the quote was, "In every adversity lies a seed of equal or greater benefit."
Huh.
And so when you ask me, like, how did I find joy in the chaos? That is such an intrinsic belief. And I've taught that. I read it in a book. And like for, I don't know how long ago, but in every adversity lies a seed of equal or greater benefit. So the adversity of you with your hearing, and so what it's like, you don't, so someone could say, well, who said that? How is that a truth? You can't just make that a universal truth that in every seed there's a seed of equal or greater benefit. And I've had people say that to me before. It's like, right, but that's what I choose to believe. And that's one of the most beautiful things as an adult. We can choose to believe things instead of having beliefs instilled in us that we're not even conscious of. So I have chosen to believe that for as long as I can remember, as my children have. So when you're going through those darkest of times, in those 2 months that I was like that with my mom, or after my mom passed, I had that belief. I was holding on to it, and I knew it wasn't anything I was going to be able to identify soon. I had to have the faith that at some point it would happen. And also clearly the gratitude of having her for 98 years, and that she was finally able to be with my dad, which I believe she is, and all the other things that, allow us to move past the personal pain of loss. But that, what you just described, is also part of what I think enables me and other people to navigate that kind of despondency, is just having a belief that things that happen are happening for your good and for your benefit, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. Having that to hold on to, I think, is a very powerful
Well, it's a test. It's a test of our experience, our talent, our commitment. It's a test of all these different things that really make up who we are. And a lot of people don't want to be tested, for whatever reason, but they'd rather just have it easy going. And I think those are the ones who have had the hardest time dealing with COVID, is because it was really disruptive at every level, and they don't know what to do with that, because they kept, the people I was talking to said, well, I just can't wait till we get back to normal. I said, well, that normal's gone. You got to decide who you want to be in the future. It's that sort of thing that I think we're all facing.
Yeah. And there's obviously a lot of ramifications that have happened as a result of that, are very difficult. I see both of my daughters are 26 and 29. They both work remote, and that's amazing. That's great to work remote, unless you're 29 years old in a city where you don't know people and you're at home all day, and then trying to figure out like how to go out. There's good and bad, just like with everything, but it's finding the balance. And over time, what will be revealed is what's the best way moving forward and things like that. But I think that holding on to the belief that everything is always evolving. There isn't an end point. So as a society, we're evolving, and as humans, we're evolving. And you said something that I thought was interesting, that as you went through what you went through and the work that you're doing, and that you feel like you became a different person. And I would contend that you're just more of who you were meant to be. not different.
That's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but but I did give up things. I did set aside
Yeah.
things, and I'm not going to do anymore. You know, the consulting I used to do, the coaching I used to do, I'm not doing that anymore. Um, that was for a different time. This is for now.
Right.
So,
Right. That's what I used to, my, where I felt my husband would say, you're like a fish in water, is when I was doing a seminar with the more people, the better. Because I loved the energy and I loved being able to impact more people. And it just was liberating and freeing and, all the things. And it felt like I was living my purpose. Well, then COVID happened. So we're not doing live seminars. Then I did some things on Zoom, and I had women from South Africa able to participate in something that they never would have been able to participate in. So then that was good. And then most recently, that the retreat that I did right before my mom passed away was just a small group. It was just 10 or 12 women. And the weekend was so profound and so life-changing and so fulfilling. So there are different things for different seasons, And that's why even when I'm working with people, it's like you discover your gifts and you use them, and they don't stop coming. You don't have only a certain number of gifts. That, in my personal belief, is there's always more. Just like love is ever expanding and there's always more ability to love, there's always more that is inside of you. And sometimes it takes one thing to end so that it can emerge.
I have begun over the last several months to ask this question of my guests towards the end of our conversation. And the question is, where do you find hope today?
Where do I find hope today?
Or do you have hope for the future? Wrapping it into the idea of hope.
I think I have hope coursing through my veins. I think
yeah.
For whatever reason, like I said, the way that I'm wired is I believe everything happens for our good and benefit. I believe in humanity. I believe in the goodness of people. So I think I find hope in the power of love. If you had to ask me where I find hope from, I was asked at a early on in my career if I had to give one piece of advice or a tip for success, what would it be? And I said, just open your mouth and your heart at the same time. That when you're communicating with people, when you're talking to people, open your heart at the same time. And it became kind of what I was known for. And I have people who would buy these t-shirts that said, open your mouth and your heart at the same time. And I think that I'm going back to that, because where I find hope is in the goodness of people and the fact that we are loving beings, and that will always prevail.
I like that very much. I like that very much. That's such a such an image to me of how we can spend every day of, and because what I see is that people are longing for someone to come to them with an open mind and open heart, and they don't see it for themselves. And but it takes having someone like you encounter them with an open mouth and an open heart to encourage them to do the same, to become like you. I know you're not saying become like me, but it's
but I do believe that our example is one of our greatest gifts to the world.
Yeah,
and that when we are examples of love and kindness, and non-judgment and all the things, that we give other people permission to be the same. And so that's where that personal initiative, to use your word, that have the initiative to be loving. And for some people it's harder because the way that they were raised, the circumstances that they came from, it's not as easy to just kind of be open-hearted all the time. But it's like anything else, the more you practice it, the better, the stronger it's like a muscle.
when I talk about initiative and I recognize people don't know what I'm talking about, I said, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to walk out your front door, and you're going to look up and down the street, and you're going to find the oldest person on your street. You're going to go down there, knock on their door, and offer to have a glass of tea with them. Do that for 15 minutes, and you will have made a difference. You will have taken initiative, and you will have made a difference in that person's life. Okay, now I'll go replicate that the next day, and the day after, and the day after. Continue to replicate those little steps of initiative, and your life will change.
100%. I agree 100%.
So do you how do people work with you? What is it that you like when people come to you? I mean, obviously people, I mean, you're a magnet. You're a love magnet, a joy magnet. You know, you're a magnet for people to come to you because you've got this sense about you that I think makes people want to attach themselves to you in some way because you have something to offer to them, and I see that as really a beautiful thing that does make a difference, that matters. So how do you want people to work with you, and what's the best way to find you?
Well, honestly, the last 2 years, it's been somewhat minimal. I just now am emerging from the nonprofit we even put on hold, but we just had our first event. And so I'm excited. And now I shared with you, I'm going to go on a writer's retreat. So I'm going to start writing again. And I feel like it's taken a couple of years, but I feel like I'm back in my own skin. And so I would say, I'm not overly exposed on social media or anything. I do have an Instagram, and I was posting some things on there, and people would contact me on Instagram, direct message me. And I have a website, my personal name, LyndaCormier.com, or the Heroic Joy Leadership Academy. Anyone can contact me. But and so I'll start writing again and sending out some newsletters, and I'm very blessed to have a incredible group of mostly women who have kind of followed along with me in my career. So if I were to do some online course or a retreat, there's people who for the past 30 years have stayed connected to me. But I'm excited to expand that group and that community.
So in a certain sense, we're announcing kind of a launch into a new world for you.
Yeah, I would say, I didn't think about that, but the timing is actually incredibly perfect. So yeah, I would just say if anyone is interested in learning more about how to stay connected, just message me on Instagram, and I'll start putting out those newsletters. When I get back from my retreat on February 4th is when I'm really looking forward to stepping back into being able to continue making a difference in the way that I have in the past, and honestly bringing in a lot of information on personal experience of navigating grief, because nobody can evade it. And I would like to use my personal experience to help others in that way.
I think that's really
not just grief about losing a parent. We grieve our children when they go to college. We grieve our youth. We grieve in different ways. People, relationships, and this most recent experience really helped me become aware of that. And that people don't really talk about it. It's not the most positive topic. But I think it's really, really important.
But it's real, and it's something we all feel.
100, yeah, we do, and all different.
Well, thank you for dealing with it. Thank you for, in this sense, being a public person who's willing to deal with it. And I think that's important, and because it's all around us. The grief, the sense of loss, it's all around us. And so I'll just say this. I was in a conversation last week with some folks, and they were talking about how they feel like things are changing. Things are changing, but they didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's because people's sense of identity is changing, because the places that they've depended on for their identity in the past is it's eroding. And so they're having to look for something new. And I said, you know where they find it? They said, no, in their relationships with people. That's where we're going to find out who we really are. So we'll be known by how we are known by other people, and they will show us who we are. And I think that's what you're saying to us, is that, that joy becomes something is reflected off the people that we're encountering, and it comes back to us, and it kind of restores us. It revives us. It gives us greater energy, because what we're giving away is being returned to us through these, I think, a new kind of relationships that are beginning to form.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would agree with that. And I think that, our relationships, our personal relationships and professional relationships are so important in our overall sense of joy. And I think that's the other thing I look forward to sharing with people is I have a very strong belief that it doesn't matter what the relationship is or what it looks like. If you want to repair it, it can be repaired.
I totally agree with you. It's a beautiful thing. It's a good place to stop. So let's say this, that if you all want to find out more about Lynda, we're going to put her contact information in the show notes so that you will have that available to you. And I'm really glad to know you now. I'm encouraged by you. And the fact that you've gone through some hard times and you've come out where you are now, it gives me great optimism for your future, because I think those of us who have had to deal with some kind of hardship, some kind of tragedy, some kind of loss, and we've come out and we found ourselves, we're going to be the ones who provide that kind of strong foundation for the future that I think our communities need.
I think so. I don't remember when I heard this or where it comes from, but it's this idea, if a vase is broken, it allows the light to shine through and it's even more beautiful. And so going through something that breaks us, and it wasn't just the last 5 years, I'm like everyone else, I've had a lot of things, hardships in my life, but that belief that it doesn't break us, it just allows the light to shine through the cracks.
I've heard that too. And I heard that, the broken vase that's been repaired is stronger than the original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similar concept.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lynda. This has been fantastic. I'm really glad you exist and glad you're out there.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's been a joy to meet you and chat with you.
I'm grateful for that. Brian has connected us together. And I thank you all for watching and listening. And if you'd like, please subscribe and hit the like button and leave a comment if you will. I'll pass it on to Lynda if you do. And we're grateful for the time you give to watching the Eddy Network podcast. And we'll see you next time here, right here, where you find us every Monday and Thursdays every week. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.